economically, militarily, totally connected. And the money flows from Kenya, and in 2007 we released a report which exposed $3 billion of that the former President Daniel Arap Moi had stolen $3 billion from the Kenyan government. That was front page of The Guardian. It ran for 24 nights on Kenyan TV straight, swung the vote by 10% going to the election, changed the result of the election. That money wasn't just stolen in Kenya. That money went out to London banks, to banks in Switzerland, it went out to properties in New York. It went out to buy a 10,000 hectare ranch in Australia. That in fact, the exchange rate of Western countries is pumped up by the looting and thievery from the developing world. So one statistic is that the West pumps in about $146 billion a year of aid to the developing world. But flowing back into Western banks is about $900 billion a year. And when corruption happens internally and the money stays in the country, well, actually you do get a trickle-down effect. But when it's taken out, the currency is debased. So you not only have the corruption in the ministry, you have a debasing of everything in the country, and oil, food, all other imports become more expensive. And then in terms of geopolitics, what the West does is very important to the developing world. And of course, we should all be familiar with this for Iraq and Afghanistan. So we have actually released many documents about the travesty that happened in Iraq and what is currently going on in Afghanistan and Guantanamo Bay and the rendition program and the main manual for Guantanamo Bay. In fact, 2 editions, which reveal that black and white, as a matter of policy, that the guards there were to hide people, everyone who came in for at least the first month from the Red Cross, and they were to forge the paperwork, and allow the Red Cross through, that they had certain sections that were show prisons. And when this came out, the spokesperson for Guantanamo Bay denied the whole thing and said that was then, it's all changed. And as a result of that, another source came forward and gave us the next year's manual and showed, no, actually it had gotten worse. So with primary sources, there is so much you can do to undo that kind of deception when it's black and white and in policy. And people sometimes say to me, well, primary sources, if you're successful in what you're doing, and every government, every institution needs to be worried about that someone may not like what's going on morally and get it out to the public, will they just speak everything and put nothing down on paper? But the reality is institutions put things down on paper so they can keep internal control. And that's why you have policy manuals like this with direct instructions to fabricate records from the Red Cross, because if you don't write direct instructions, people won't follow your orders. So I don't think it's possible for systematic administrative injustice to occur without written records. At the top level, yes, people can just speak in confidence, but if it spreads and affects many people, then you have to have some sort of written communications trail. So lots of very important geopolitical material. This is, I'm amazed that some of this stuff hasn't been taken up more, and there's immediate economic reasons why some of it hasn't. That Guantanamo manual certainly was. That was a major thing in New York Times and many places. But here's an example of something that wasn't picked up. And why things like this are not picked up is very, very interesting and tells us something about our media economy. So this is the US Special Forces' current policy on unconventional warfare. That is warfare that is conducted through or using surrogates to undermine a government or to oppress an insurgency, but through surrogates. Quite a significant book. I joke that it reads like Noam Chomsky times -1. This is for intelligent people that are organizing insurgencies. US soldiers. I don't know if you know what special forces are, but you know I guess the classic example that comes to mind is that they're the people behind the Contras, the people who train the Contras. They're the people behind the El Salvadorian government that was suppressing insurgency in El Salvador. That hasn't been picked up. Why not? It's current policy. It says in this manual that the Geneva Convention says one thing, but US law, US policy, military policy is to do something else. It's okay to kidnap people. It's okay to wear the uniform of government forces behind their lines, something that the Geneva Convention forbids. Why hasn't it been picked up? Well, because it's hundreds of pages. It's current policy. It's from September last year. Someone has to read it all. Someone has to understand a few military acronyms. Someone has to use a dictionary occasionally. And then there's no personalities. So it's just not easy enough for people to bother researching and reporting. But there it is. So I get, people ask, how can you keep going if you spend a lot of effort, and this document has some story behind it. You spend a lot of effort to get something like this out to the public. And then there's one, in this case there was one article on this by some fringe leftist thing. What do you feel about this? Well, what I feel is that even if the media doesn't work, this thing is here for historians. This thing is there for those countries that are subject to their governments being undermined. So it's not, the material we release is not just for the general public. The general public is very important, but it's also for legitimate intelligence agencies. So intelligence agencies do have a legitimate role, and that is to protect their country from being taken over by a foreign government. That is their legitimate role, and to protect against terrorism. So documents like this perform a legitimate role, even if it's not one that you can see occurring in public. Okay, well, 5 minutes. I think I have about 3 hours of material. So, Kaupthing, the biggest bank in Iceland, was nationalized in November last year. It caused, amongst other things, the collapse of the Icelandic economy, and the many savings were also lost in Denmark and in the UK, because that Icelandic bank, through European legislation, had moved into London and Copenhagen. We got hold of and released the secret loan book of Kaupthing, and that was over $6 billion represented in that loan book. Of all loans, in fact, over 45 million euros. Sorry, 6 billion euros. All loans over 45 million euros. And what that exposed is that there would be a 100 million euro loan, and who is it going to? Well, someone who owns shares in Kaupthing, a major shareholder of Kaupthing. And what is the collateral? He's a good guy, we know him. That's the collateral, he's one of us. And this is one of the things that took the Kaupthing down. When we released this document on July 30, it was only a couple of days later that we got the Kaupthing, the new Kaupthing, writing to us and saying, "Well, you're all going to go to jail in Iceland. Well, it's pretty cold there, but I think we'll be okay," because this operates under Icelandic banking secrecy law. Now, that night, RUV, the national broadcaster of Iceland, decided to make this document and its contents their major segment for the evening, their first and major segment.